The following is a sponsored message from the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego. Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit, and a majority of our budget comes from listeners and readers like you. But we also depend on revenue from grants and advertisers to maintain independence and produce more of the hard-hitting journalism you expect from us. Did you know that according to the CDC, drowning kills more children who are 1 to 4 years old than anything else except birth defects? Among children 1 to 14, drowning is the second leading cause of unintentional injury death. Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego believes drowning is preventable, and it is the nonprofit's vision to teach every child in San Diego how to swim. To learn more about their mission and how to make a difference in your community, please visit www.preventdrowningfoundation.org. And if you like our work and are interested in becoming a sponsor, please email development@voiceofsandiego.org.
Welcome to those of you listening on News Radio 600 Cocoa. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm here with my friend Andrew Keatts.
What's up, buddy?
And my friend Sara Libby.
Hello.
How are you both?
Great.
Good. We are doing our last show before this finally happens. The Armageddon will begin on Tuesday evening. Late.
Didn't really think we would have that much forewarning from an Armageddon. It's nice to have 5 days to prepare. If you haven't started your cellar yet, there you go. Go ahead.
You know, apocalyptic jokes are really fun.
That's usually how you want to start a show. Come out, cheer people up, bring it up nice and high.
I've decided I'm not a comedian. I'm just not a stand-up comedian. I'm just never going to succeed in that.
It's good that you've come to that realization.
That's a positive development.
That I've realized that. I'm still going to speak, and I'm still going to try to make jokes during it, but I've decided, just like I'm not going to be a quarterback on a professional football team, probably not going to be on a professional baseball team, though I did dream that I was on a professional baseball team the other day.
Oh, good for you.
Okay.
And those things are out. Professional comedian, probably out.
Okay.
I was emceeing the Alonso Awards for the Downtown Partnership. I don't know why they had me on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine. I keep getting feedback that some people thought my jokes were funny.
When you tested them out on us, I was pleasantly surprised, to be honest.
There's a lot of comedians out there that are very successful who are like, I mean, sometimes people from the crowd say I was funny.
Yeah, I've had worse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
we've seen those.
The problem was that the people didn't shut up. Like there was a roar the whole time.
Yeah. No. Controlling the crowd's part of the job.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I couldn't get their attention for anything. And it's notorious for that, I guess. But and then, I dropped a few jokes that the mayor's office didn't like.
Yeah.
Apparently the wounds about the downtown the two downtown real estate assets that are kind of weird.
Yeah.
The old Sempra building where the city bought it but hasn't been able to move anybody into it because it's just not working. I don't really know the exact. We have to.
It's very
dig
expensive. Is the problem?
Yeah, it's like $18,000 a day being lost or something like that.
Okay.
And then there's the skydiving facility.
Yeah, it is interesting that the skydiving facility turning that into a homeless intake center is difficult.
Yeah,
and no one wants to do it.
It's apparently quite a rough hole.
Really poking at a bruise there.
Okay.
Yeah, and they didn't like that.
Well,
didn't land well.
I'm sure it was easier for them to stomach since the jokes weren't funny.
Well, no, they were though.
Okay.
Remember, a few people think they were.
Okay, right. That's right. Those handful of people who've offered you sympathy.
Should I try?
No. We're moving on. We have a show.
All right, we have a special show today. We are going to do a sort of draft. I came up with this genius idea for the show.
Good job, Scott.
Thank you.
Really enjoy it.
That we would each draft contests coming up in the local election. We're not going to talk about the House and the Senate. local is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about several local races, and we're going to prioritize them. Again, we've set it up as a draft.
Yeah. So it's like a fantasy draft. We are drafting based on the races we are most interested in. We'll follow standard fantasy rules. It'll be a snake draft. One person will begin. We'll go through that way.
That way, it's a way of, thank you for, by the way, articulating my idea so well.
Yeah, sure.
But it is a way to make sure that we're so anxious for the most important races, in our opinion, to watch, to get up there, that we will put them first forward. And
you don't need to articulate this part of it. The why the premise works part. Yeah, you skip over that. This is like Trumpian of you.
I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, sure.
I can do whatever I want. We did have a rock, paper, scissors effort tournament at the beginning of this to decide who goes first. And unfortunately, the one person who knows the least about sports here, Andy Keatts, won that.
Yes.
Go ahead, Andy.
With the first pick in the 2018 election preview draft, Andrew Keatts selects the District 4 City Council race.
Oh, man, I had that.
The District 4
Did we all have that one?
I'm not going to tell you what I may or may not have.
Yes. Look, on fundamentals, it's just impossible to imagine Council President Myrtle Cole losing. Incumbents never lose, and she isn't just an incumbent. She's the council president. And yet, Monica Montgomery defeated her in the primary and has marshaled a legitimate grassroots coalition to lift her campaign. Adding to matters, she is a former Cole staffer who left after Cole's comments defending racial profiling. All of the establishment entities are supporting Cole.
All of them?
Yes, and none are supporting Monica. It really is a City Hall insiders versus the community establishment race. It is the most fascinating race of the year, maybe since in the entire time I've been here.
Yeah, I agree.
Whoa.
I am fully in on this. I had it as one of my top picks as well. Now, there's a fascinating battle playing out. There's these mailers that went out. Labor is just eviscerating Monica Montgomery, going after her. The Hotel Workers Union has these brutal mailers out. The United Domestic Workers, brutal mailers out. Labor Council itself has these mailers out, all attacking Monica Montgomery. One of them says, this is the one that gets me. It says, switching parties for a paycheck. Monica Montgomery worked for a top City Hall Republican while he opposed raising the minimum wage and blocked police reform. All right, I love this stuff because notice how they put that top City Hall Republican.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Right.
Like
who might that be?
Like they deliberately shy away from saying Mayor Kevin Faulconer.
Right.
Now, why? One might be that he's popular or something, and they don't want to make it sound like she worked for somebody that anybody would.
Yeah, right.
Or what other reason would they do that?
Well, the other reason might be that Mayor Kevin Faulconer supports Myrtle Cole.
That might be it, because it just turns out that we learned last week that Mayor Faulconer is working overtime to help Myrtle Cole get elected. And he's doing it in two ways. One, he's blocking people on the right who see an opportunity to go after Myrtle Cole and try to replace her. They don't like, she snubbed them after they supported her to get into the council president seat. She, she supported things like the styrofoam ban and stuff like that others were fired up about.
Also, I think importantly, Monica Montgomery has voiced support for an election to school board, or a reform to school board elections,
right?
Which is a priority for some on the right.
And some of them just say, like whatever is better than this,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so he has proactively worked to stop those expenditures from happening, and he's been raising money for her on the side. So they have, she has the labor and she has Faulconer involved and protecting both flanks.
Yes. Yeah, it's so interesting on both levels because you have labor going hard against a Democrat, which is unusual, and then you have Republicans going in for a Democrat, which is also unusual. And it's just like such a fascinating race.
And like to be clear, like anyone who's paid attention to both of these people for any period of time knows pretty clearly that Monica is to the left of Myrtle Cole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like on important issues to today's Democratic Party. The Myrtle, one big issue is Myrtle Cole's racial profiling comments, but not only that. And yet it hasn't really mattered. It's coming down to basic like political loyalty as opposed to political ideology.
Yeah, this is a fascinating game of cynicism. Now, there was a reaction to those mailers.
Yes.
A letter sent out on behalf of several really important names in the community. Dwayne Crenshaw, who lost the last election against Myrtle Cole. Barry Pollard,
who ran in that race as well and is a community leader there. Ken Marlborough, who was the chair of the community planning group and ran for supervisor just a few months ago.
Yeah, the list is long of people who signed this. Sean Ello, who's running in that community college. And the language was stunning in this letter. It says, as we head into the final days of this campaign, this silly season, we urge, no, we demand, you do not disparage, denigrate, or otherwise distort the beauty of who Monica is to win this council election with a candidate our community does not want. We are watching and we are keeping score. Please be strongly advised and forewarned. Any further attacks from the Democratic establishment or labor against Monica or the perpetuation of the multitude of lies in support of Cole will absolutely, without question, be remembered in 2020 and beyond. The line is in the sand. Wow.
Yeah. Often it is us who has to try to convey that like a gauntlet has been thrown, a line has been drawn, some sort of line like that. They've said it. They've made the subtext explicit. They're saying, do not do this anymore. You will have continued problems in our district if you do.
It's also just kind of a strange letter in that they don't call out any specifics of an ad. And if you remember back, Dwayne Crenshaw himself was the subject of some really vicious
misleading ads.
Misleading ads. He doesn't say this specific thing was misleading. He doesn't say this specific thing was a lie. And so while he's saying there's this line in the sand, it's kind of hard to tell what that line is. Is it just don't be mean to Monica?
Basically, I think what's interesting about it, it's not a letter that is written to voters.
Right.
It's not a piece of a political campaign. It is like from
to
us
the party.
To
Absolutely.
you. Stop doing this.
They did draw the line actually more clearly. They said, we're calling on you to denounce the mail, apologize to her, and ideally pull your endorsement from Cole.
Wow.
Respect the community. And then they say, at a minimum, you'll do nothing else to support Cole. No more get out the vote, no more robocalls, no more positive or negative hit pieces. Stand down. I only read a lot of the men, too. There's several women involved. Mary Penetrante, there's Selena Villegas, a lot of people signed this thing. A fascinating development in that race. I agree with you. Top race. Council incumbents don't lose. Council presidents don't lose. If this is interesting Tuesday night, that itself says a lot.
Agreed.
All right, Sarah, you get pick number 2.
Good luck, dude. Boy.
Oh, I'm torn.
You're
it's
like,
down to the wire.
You're
Do we
down,
have like the countdown clock going?
Yeah, you're down to pick Ryan Leaf after I've already taken Peyton Manning.
With my pick in the 2018 Voice of San Diego election draft, I choose Measure D.
Ooh. On my list. On my big board. Okay.
Really?
Yes, it was on my big board.
Measure D. Explain it, please.
All right, so this is the countywide measure to reform elections in San Diego so that they must be decided in November. If you remember, the city of San Diego enacted a similar change in 2016. So I think there are going to be a lot of individual races on election night, D4 being one of them, that will tell us a lot about the immediate future of the city. Another one is Supervisor District 4. This one will really say a lot about where the county is headed long term. Mm-hmm. So we'll have Kristen Gaspar running for re-election in 2020. So if this goes through, or maybe not.
I've heard she might be already aiming for a Congress run at that point.
Oh, man.
Ooh, okay.
So say she is running for re-election and that this measure passes, that race will look a lot different depending on whether it's possible for her to win in June as opposed to running in November when there's a presidential election on the ballot driving people to the polls. It's just like a huge wrench in everything we know about how these races play out.
Very disruptive.
Yes.
Fantastic pick, Sarah. I'm very impressed by your keen insight into local politics. And listen, I would go as far as to say that the outcome of Measure D will determine going into 2020 whether Democrats should be thought of as favorites to take over the Board of Supervisors or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Measure D passes and all of these races have to go to November, and that coastal toss-up district that Kristen Gaspar is in right now is going to be decided in November, I give the edge in that race to the Democrats. If it is going to be decided in June because this does not pass, I give a slight edge to the Republicans.
One thing that's
slight edge either way based on absolutely nothing, so feel free to ignore that, but that's my expectation.
One thing that's interesting that gets talked about a little less when we talk about reforms like these is that it's not just what happens in November, but that I think that this would impact who even runs at all.
Yes.
And so it's interesting.
Yep. God, it's a good pick. I'm so prepared to be disappointed by some clunker Scott's about to pick. Some Steve Emptman draft pick right now.
All right.
Here comes Sean Bradley.
Akili Smith.
Yeah.
Here he comes.
Michael Oloakondi.
Sean Bradley was
Joey
a good
Harrington.
player.
All of mine are
Sean
Oregon
Bradley
players.
played well. Sean Bradley played well for many years.
You're just like BYU love. You're just like, oh, but Utah.
With the third pick in the 2018 Voice of San Diego elections draft, the things to watch for Tuesday night, I picked Measure YY.
Ooh, okay.
I had it.
It's pretty surprised that you made a good pick there, but
All
that
right.
is a good one.
It's good.
All right.
Okay.
The San Diego Unified School District wants to raise property taxes. I just coincidentally got my copy of the property tax bill in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
It's not nothing.
Yeah.
This would put the bond measures part of it, of that, the list. There's the zoo,
Right.
and the water things.
Yeah.
And then there's the San Diego Unified Bonds. This would put this over $1,000 for me. So about, $300 or something. So it's not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the campaign has a new ad out.
I buy bottled water for my students so they don't have to drink school water with lead. I support Measure YY to get lead out of school drinking water.
There is an implication.
Wow. That is a stunning ad.
I feel like they're implying that the water's not safe at her school, which is the Linda Vista Elementary School.
One might.
Could you imagine for a second a world in which the Voice of San Diego writes a story wherein the lead anecdote is a teacher from Linda Vista School who buys bottled water for her students because the water is not safe to drink because there's lead in it. And then we went on to explain that it is unsafe for kids in San Diego Unified Schools to drink the water.
And that unless we pass a new tax, you should not drink the water there.
Could you imagine the way they would react to that story?
Would not be positive.
Could you imagine the way
I
they
feel
would react to
confident
that story?
saying. I mean, if you look back to the way they reacted to other stories about small findings of lead, and they, were apoplectic. They were just, this is wrong. This is a lie.
It's
Everything's
perfectly
great.
safe. We're below
the
these standards.
safest.
Right. Yeah. So I think that Will Huntsberry and Rai Ravar did an excellent job this week, sort of explaining the whole lead thing and how much there is in the water, and then how it became literally the central message of this campaign. So as they point out, there's about $45 million set in this new bond for things that could be considered part of this effort to take lead out of the water.
Now, $45 million, that sounds like a lot. What percent of that what percent does that represent of the total bonded revenue they expect to generate through this measure?
Well, they expect to generate $3.5 billion billion.
Okay, 3.5, 45. It's probably pretty close, right?
That would be
less than 2%.
2% of the thing that they've made the central issue.
Yeah.
Wow.
So look, her school, this is like the teacher of the year from Linda Vista Elementary School. Her school has water fountains that are working right now and that meet federal standards for lead in the water. And that the district, if the district really agrees with what is being put out, this message, very clear. I was joking earlier when I said it wasn't clear, because it's clear.
That there's a clear implication.
That your children are in danger if they drink that water.
Yes.
The sample, in fact, showed a lead amount so low that it's lower than what is in bottled water, which she says she's giving out to her students. And so I thought they did a fantastic job of pointing out that by giving these students bottled water, she could actually be giving them water with more lead in it than what the kids would get at that drinking fountain.
And like, look, like the San Diego Unified was obviously criticized quite harshly by media in the city, including us, but not exclusive to us, when lead was discovered in different schools, right? So, and they have responded at this point. They're now taking a clear stance. They're saying that no amount of lead in the water is safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's a step in the middle.
Yeah,
that they could have taken.
Well, I mean, they have what is the two step that they now find themselves in is what they will have to do or say if this measure doesn't pass.
Right.
Because they have now clearly articulated that there is lead in the water,
and it's unsafe.
It is unsafe, and that there must be a new bond measure to correct that problem. And so if this doesn't pass, are they really willing to tell the voters or the parents of children that there's nothing they can do and this is unsafe and their children are being poisoned?
That's
Maybe.
really interesting because another thing that Will and Rye pointed out is that even though there's $2 billion left in existing school bond money that they haven't tapped yet, the head of the bond committee has told them that they can't use that money to pay for new pipes, even though they promised that they would do exactly that because they're afraid they might get sued.
All right, we got more on that and several other draft picks about this whole election coming up Tuesday. If you stay after the break on the podcast, or if you get the podcast, if you're listening on broadcast right now. Thank you to our partners at News Radio 600 Kogo. And for the podcast, we'll be right back.
This Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by Competitive Edge Research. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like Competitive Edge Research. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize their support during the show. Competitive Edge Research, San Diego's premier public opinion research firm, sponsors this podcast because they like good journalism as much as they like good polling. Since 1987, Competitive Edge has helped clients see the why buried deep within the numbers. Competitive Edge designs comprehensive research studies, collects bulletproof data, and employs robust analytics so you'll understand why things are the way they are. Competitive Edge. Know what to do. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
We are back. So let's just continue this thought. We're talking about Measure YY. Now, I think the case for Measure YY is that 18, 20 years ago, they came up with a thing that said this whole district needs about $7 to $9 billion of refurbishment. They did one tax increase in bond. They did another one that was an extension. Then they did another one that was a new tax increase. And this is like the third. And so And the argument is like, now we're going to finally pull it off. We're going to fix all these pipes. We're going to do all these alternative energy things. We're going to rebuild a lot of schools. We're going to do all these things. It's going to be done. You're going to get everything you want, air conditioning, all that stuff, right? That's the argument for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we keep pointing out is, and they keep taking us as being the devils on this issue, but what we're pointing out is like a lot of the things you promised in the past, is including repairing plumbing and replacing plumbing in these very schools, 6 of which you found this elevated lead content, you promised to do before in these previous bonds. So how are we to believe you're going to get the lead out? And that's what drives me nuts, is that in 4 to 6 years when they come with another tax or bond, they're going to be like, this will fix this and that. And I'll say, look, there's lead there. And they'll be like, you shouldn't have made such a big deal about the lead. Just like they did with asbestos. Remember last time they had asbestos in there? Yep. We go back and check and they're like, why are you asking about asbestos?
Asbestos is fine. It's not dangerous.
It's not dangerous unless you have to, to cut into the wall and rip it out. It's like, well, you ran a campaign on it. We didn't invent this idea.
And that's so it gets me. But to your last point that you made, Sarah, you pointed out how Andy Berg, one of the leaders of this bond and oversight person in this, and he's also part of the electrical contractors group, the national NECA. He pointed out that, look, we can't go back with the money we have right now and spend it on lead removal now, or lead abatement, or whatever they're calling it. Now, his argument is because we didn't include lead in the previous bond, but they did include repairing and replacing plumbing.
Yes, exactly, which is how you get rid of lead.
Yeah, they keep making this distinction between lead and plumbing. You can do plumbing, but you can't do lead. That's right. Crazy. That's just it hurts my brain.
I hereby promise that if push comes to shove, if this measure fails, and you are forced to tap into old bond revenue to do these projects that you're now promising, and furthermore, somebody sues you as that's a breach of the old measure, we will write a very critical story about that lawsuit. Yeah. That is a promise.
Yeah, fair enough. That's quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. Yeah.
All right. So I get a new pick.
You get a new pick. So yeah, this is on the turn, as they call.
All right.
On the turn.
In the 4th pick of the Voice of San Diego, elections draft.
Yeah.
I choose measure L.
Wow. Early. That is early. That is a Tim Tebow pick if I ever seen one. No one was going for Tim Tebow until the 3rd round. You traded back into the 1st to take him at 25. Wow.
This measure would tie the city council and other elected officials' salaries to the state judicial salary, eliminate longstanding car allowances, and the use of funds for constituent mailings. Okay, so
it raises the money that city council members get.
Yeah, salary for mayor and city council.
Yep.
But more importantly to me, it puts it away forever.
Yes.
And I have watched the city council mess around with this stupid thing my entire professional career, except for the couple of years before I came to San Diego.
Yeah, I've pitched stories on this before, and it's like it draws your ire. So it's like, no, it's stupid. They're not going to do anything because they're all cowards, and it's all stupid.
Yeah,
we're not doing it.
Actually, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So this the council's salaries have not gone up since 2003 because there was a financial crisis, and it would have looked bad.
Yes.
They had a salary setting commission that regularly recommended salary increases, and they regularly rejected them in this flurry of drama. It was so stupid every time. And there was always one pundit out there being like, can you believe these guys?
Yeah.
Even though they weren't going to do it anyway. And then they even came up with the plan that said, we're going to do it for the future to make sure none of us get a raise, but the next people do. And that was still too controversial for them to pull off. This would finally solve it. They finally put it on the ballot. Now, I used to not be that fired up about it because they got a pension. So it was $75,000 a year or whatever. And then they'd get but they got a pension for the rest of their life. That's a pretty good benefit. They took that away though. And it's like, it needs to adjust. It needs to be a little bit better. It is a dramatic increase. Council members would likely see their salaries rise to from $75,000 to $120,000 by late 2020. The mayor would go up to about $200,000. The mayor now makes $100,000, but again, no pension. So look, I'm looking forward to seeing this get resolved, or it could not get resolved and continue to beleaguer this town. There's like 10 issues that just hang over the city hall like stupid clouds. Like Charlie Brown has a rain cloud over him, just follows him. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is good to dispose of this, to move on, to open up that collective civic bandwidth for other issues. Also, if you believe the people who have supported this for years, it should be one less barrier to attracting qualified candidates.
Yes.
Right. That if you're a professional that was a good manager, you shouldn't, maybe you should be attracted to this role.
Yeah.
Right. They make actually shockingly small amount.
Right.
All right. So that's mine. I know it's a reach, but I just wanted to make
it's
sure.
okay.
I'm still surprised.
Yeah, no, it's a shocker of the draft. That's Madison Square Garden. Whoa, for that one. That's go ahead.
All right. Here we are. What am I? The fifth pick? Okay. The fifth pick of the 2018 Voice of San Diego elections draft.
Yep.
I choose Assembly District 77.
Whoa. Wow. Another reach.
What a surprises.
That is taking Johnny Flynn with Steph Curry still on the board, is what that is. Okay?
I know
Minnesota
it's a surprise.
All right, Andy, let's just clear this up. You are very good at sports.
I know.
You're an athletic person, and this was your idea.
That's clear.
So, okay. Are you good now?
Uh-huh. Feel great.
Do we have to keep doing this? Like, Kwame.
Kwame would have been a good one.
I know.
Kwame Brown was number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not picking this race, which is between Assemblyman Brian Mainshine, a Republican, and Sunday Gover, who is a Democrat. I'm not picking it because I necessarily think it's going to be very close. I think Mainshine is still, a pretty solid favorite to win this. But I'm picking this because this is a point that Andy's made. If Mainshine goes down, I think that would say all you need as far as where this whole election is going. So if a really moderate, likable guy who doesn't pursue a lot of really crazy, high-profile legislation,
who breaks
goes
and
down.
votes with Dems a lot.
Yeah,
Best
absolutely.
friends with
Tony
the
Atkins and
Democrat, the state Senate president.
Yeah. So if a Republican like that goes down, as opposed to somebody like a Lori Zaff or a Diane Harkey, who I think are solidly more conservative than Brian Mainshine, I think that would really spell a lot of trouble for Republicans.
Yeah, also it'll be interesting because there's been, there's a lot of party interest in this race. A lot of money is flowing into this race in these late stages.
Millions of dollars.
Like millions of dollars is flowing into this race. And yet there's been practically no media coverage of it at all.
That's so true.
So it almost creates an interesting scenario where you have like an undisturbed environment where you just get to see where the voters are unmoved by any external forces besides political advertising and the fundamentals of the race.
Yeah, and it's also kind of adjacent to two races that could impact it, I guess. So it's near, the 49th Congressional District, which theoretically could drive Democrats to the polls. And it's also quite near the home of John Cox, who's running at the top of the ticket. So, maybe his hometown, his home neighborhood is coming out to support him. So
yeah, we're talking about like Scripps Ranch and Rancho Penasquitos and stuff.
It comes all the way down to like Sarah Mesa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Yeah. So that the one thing I would make sure, like Mainshine is really good at getting elected in that area.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't proven he can get elected outside that area. He had a real bad city attorney's race. But in that area, he, I remember 2003 after the fires and stuff, like he was like the man around there. And so, yeah, if he got unseated from this pretty solidly Republican area, that would be just fascinating.
Yeah.
That's a good pick. Okay,
Thank you.
this is
All
a
right.
good. This is a good conceit. We're pulling out stuff we may not have talked about. Go ahead, Andy. Your draft number 6.
All right. Well, so you know on draft day,
Yeah.
when they invite like 8 to 12 people to actually be at the draft,
Right.
and there's always the one guy who slides, and the camera's on him, and there's more and more people who aren't there getting picked, and he's getting his head's buried further and further in his hands, and no one can believe it. His mom is next to him saying, "Don't worry about it. You're going to get picked, and it's going to be fine." And then he gets picked, and he starts crying, and it's like the most emotional moment. We've got that here. I am taking the value of the draft with my second pick. In the 2018 Voice of San Diego election draft, I am taking the District 8 City Council race.
That's a good one.
Whoa.
Good one.
That is not what I thought you were going to say.
I know what you thought I was going to say.
Don't
All right.
say it.
All right.
Don't
The
say
District 8 City Council race. Look, South Bay politics are a complicated place. And as many predicted a year or more ago, this has turned into a proxy fight between all of that down there. The different political factions that have developed over years and decades predating my time covering this race. And yet, it has sorted out in a way that I am fascinated to see how it plays out. Vivian Moreno has basically the support of her boss, David Alvarez, but also the Municipal Employees Association, the white-collar union there.
At the City Hall,
And City Hall. And late in the game, an independent expenditure committee backed by the Building Industry Association is started spending on her behalf.
Gomez supports
and
her.
Georgette Gomez supports her, which I would say that's not just another city council person not just another endorsement in that district. Based on Georgette's experience with the EHC, she has deep roots there, and I think goes a long way. And yet on the other side, you've got Antonio Martinez, a San Isidro school board member, who has basically the support of everyone else. He's got the Democratic Party. He's got most of the major unions. He's got Juan Vargas, Ben Hueso, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez.
There was this Bananas Democratic Party ad.
A Bananas Democratic Party ad.
That hit Vivian Moreno, called her Trump-like?
It said the choice of Trump Republicans.
Dang.
Vivian Moreno used to be the president of the Young Dems. She's an elected member of the Democratic Central Committee.
Yeah.
She's a delegate.
So the top targets of Democrats are
Monica
Montgomery and Vivian Moreno.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. So look, it has developed into a fascinating race. I am very interested to see how it plays out. I moderated a debate earlier this week at the Logan Heights Community Development Corporation between them. And as we were going through an otherwise pretty standard forum where they make similar points back and forth, this one got a little testy. We have a clip of that.
I would put my track record next to my opponents any day of the week. Google our name. See what we've been doing for the past 8 years and get to know us and what we've done. My opponent has sat in the San Isidro School District. I don't think it's amateur to say that it's one of the most corrupt school districts in the whole state of California. Google San Isidro School District so you guys can, find out for yourselves. There's been 9 superintendents since he's been in office. The past superintendent was the second highest paid superintendent in the state of California. We are talking about San Isidro School District people. That is not amateur. That is real. That is reality. And that is something, we're talking about kids. That's horrible.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
I think the forum was to keep it positive, but now that it's become negative, I feel I have to respond to this issue.
You absolutely deserve a chance
honestly,
to respond.
for far too long, that's the type of stereotypes that have plagued my community for years. And frankly, to be honest with you, when it comes to what I've done in the San Isidro School District, the first people to endorse my campaign for city council were our teachers and classified staff. And they did that knowing well that they didn't want to do that because they know that if I win, we'd be leaving the San Isidro School Board. I have stood with my students and my teachers and my classified staff since the very beginning fighting corruption. And I've done that. And I've done it very difficult times for me. But the reality is that when it comes to how out of touch my opponent is with the community, I can go to any school right now and know that everyone that's there, whether it's student, classified staff, or teacher, will greet me and knowing well that they know that I stand with them and I've always stood with them. So the reality is that I think, Vivian, you should visit some of the schools and know, at least get an opinion as to what the real atmosphere is, as opposed to the stereotypes and the articles and the politics.
Wow.
Whew. So
Was the forum really supposed to be positive?
There's a forum. You got into this in the primary a lot.
Yeah.
Forum means something very different to candidates than debate.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but they really do think that?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Where you just like alternately present,
yes,
as opposed to engage.
Yes, exactly. And so yeah, it was that happened. But look, I am fascinated by this. I think for one thing, it's a carbon copy in so many ways of the David Alvarez victory in 2010 when he won the city council seat. There was a crowded field in the primary. He came in first place. As I've been told, basically, a lot of people seemed to pat him on the head and say, hey, good job, and fully expected Felipe Hueso to run away with it in the general, and it wasn't all that close. If Vivian wins this race, I think it will suggest that David Alvarez, Travis Knowles, his chief of staff who works with them on campaigns, Vivian Moreno, they have figured out how to tap into and talk to voters in that district in a really significant way. What appeals to them, what they care about, and
like whatever struggles David Alvarez has in
the party,
in the region-wide politics.
Yes,
he's still got that.
Still got a close connection with voters there, and he's running for supervisor in a district that overlaps that, and it will tell me something very interesting about the nature of the Democratic Party and South Bay politics.
Fascinating. So, yeah, there could be a very different city council if Monica Montgomery and Vivian Moreno win, or if Monica Montgomery and Antonio Martinez wins, or if Myrtle Call and Antonio Martinez wins. Like, it's a very different makeup or feel, even though they're both all Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people are mostly only interested in the red versus blue races. These are two blue versus blue races that I think the dynamic of the council changes considerably.
Let me ask you this. Do you think we're starting to see more clearly what a very Democratic-dominated city is going to be like politically? Like, the fights aren't going to get nicer.
Yeah.
Like, in many ways, they're going to get
more
worse.
vicious. Yeah.
And I mean, look at the BIA coming in to support Vivian here. I think that's exactly the type of thing you would imagine in a city where it's clearly a Democratic city, but the pro-business interests still want to decide between a more moderate business-friendly Democrat and a more labor-friendly Democrat.
Right. They're not just going to sit every issue out.
And they're like, well, we don't have Republicans. I guess we're out. Yeah.
All right. These have been great. Been very happy with this draft so far. You've got a good team, Andy, so far.
This is
solid.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, Mel Kiper gives it an A already.
Yeah. Yes, it's
Back
you.
to me?
Sarah.
No, it goes to Scott. It's a snake. Come on.
No. It was you first, then her, then me, then her, then you, and then her, and me.
Yeah,
No.
so you have another one, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's me. I have
Yeah,
the pick.
it's you.
I have the pick. I'm sorry. Yes.
I don't need to explain to you how drafts work.
Boy, all right. I have so many picks available here.
I know. Your pick is going to determine my pick for sure.
All right. I've got one. Sometimes in the 7th round, you just got to go with the player you like. Just it's not about value at that point anymore. You got the guy that came in, had a good meeting with you, jumped off the tape, for instance. I'm going with the La Mesa City Council races.
Whoa!
La Mesa City Council races. Give them to me. Look, what I'm doing on Tuesday night is I'm looking for clues that tell me about where San Diego politics is headed. And if that's what I'm doing, I'm going to look at how things play out at the La Mesa City Council. 2 years ago, Colin Perriman apparent. One as a Democrat in La Mesa for the first time that anyone could remember. Now, 2 avowed liberals are seeking to join him while running against 2 Republican incumbents. Those Republican incumbents are Bill Baber and Guy McWhorter. They have not run into any scandal. They are not deeply unpopular in any way that I have been made aware. And yet they're running against 2 people who are fascinating in their own right. Dave Myers ran to the left of Bill Gore in his bid to unseat him as the sheriff earlier this spring. He lost. He quickly jumped into this race. Akilah Weber, who is an accomplished physician, is running a very progressive campaign. She also happens to be the daughter of Dr. Shirley Weber, the assemblywoman. And look, if one or both of Myers and Akilah Weber win, and a city like La Mesa, they call it the gateway to East County, starts to shift from a Republican stronghold to someplace where Democrats can routinely run and win. I think that is the thing that would shake me to my core if I was a member of the Republican Party's Central Committee in this county. La Mesa City Council.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a sleeper. That's a sleeper.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many points they get. Yeah, I got nothing on that. Good job. Nice poll.
Thanks, guys.
Interesting.
That was a good pick.
Yeah.
That was a good pick.
He says about himself.
A good pick. Good pick.
All right, so while Andy was explaining the La Mesa City Council, I was huddling with my advisors because here I am in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
And, I find myself in a position I didn't expect to be in.
Sure.
I'm like the 2016 Pittsburgh Steelers, and Juju Smith-Schuster is still on the table, and I got to take it.
Well done.
So
you got a champagne
with this
problem.
pick, I choose measures E and G.
Ooh. Wow. I have to admit, I thought they'd go undrafted. A lot of pre-draft problems, some failed drug tests, some character concerns. They didn't interview all that well. Measures E and G, I thought might have. People are just sick of them. I thought they were going to fall out of the draft board.
Yeah.
A lot of teams. There were rumors. Todd McShay had said ahead of time that lots of teams had just pulled him off the draft board and said we wouldn't draft him. Yeah.
Maybe they had
got caught with a gas mask.
Slow 40 time.
Yeah. Just before the draft started, somebody tweeted a picture of them smoking pot with a gas mask on.
I'm taking a chance.
Okay.
And there are a few scenarios that could play out that I'll be interested in watching. So, today, Measure G got even more support. Several of the county supervisors jumped on board. This one is the SDSU West plan.
That's what that plan was missing. It didn't have any endorsements.
Right. So these were the last 3 people in San Diego County government to not endorse it.
They're like, wait, there's a water district out there? Yeah, let's get them on board. Have them endorse it.
The biggest laughs I did get at that MC thing the other night was when I said to Craig Benedetto, the lobbyist for Measure E, I said, all right, you can go sit down now and go sit with the only other Soccer City supporter in the room. And it hit because
that landed
it's
well.
real. There's nobody else except the mayor and Scott Sherman, that support Measure E.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, Sarah. Tell us about your pick.
Well, don't know how much we need to really hash it out.
Actually, it's fine. It's fine. We don't need to.
We've talked
You
enough.
all see what I'm getting at here. It's interesting. I want to see what happens.
Let me say something.
I stand by it.
Right.
Measure there for a while we framed it as Measure E, Soccer City, Measure G, SDSU West, SDSU Mission Valley, and then neither.
Yeah.
And now I've seen this emergence of this 3rd or 4th.
Yes on both.
Yes on both. There's a lot of people who are like I just want to see something happen. It's like me and the city council salaries, like just figure it out. Just here's all the votes, whatever needs to do to advance it. Please just get it done. And so it was fascinating. I got myself in another stupid Twitter squabble about this thing.
Yeah, promoting my story.
Yeah. And
has still been RIPing my mentions 3 days later. Thank you.
Yeah, you did a story about whether Soccer City's promises, the best things about Soccer City, or at least it's the community benefits they tout the most these days, are actually combined in many ways in side letters they have made sent to the city and the mayor after this, which they contend are binding because of they're making them public right now, and people are going to expect them to have been part of this deal, and they can't renege, right?
Essentially, that they have left a paper trail that establishes a clear legislative intent that if voters approve Soccer City, then it will be clear to any judge that was ever forced to rule that these are commitments.
And your headline, our headline was, these binding promises have uncertain.
It's uncertain if they're binding promises,
right?
Basically,
and the people that support it should be a story they love, but the people who support SDSU West thought that was just completely unfair.
Yeah,
to not say those are outright not binding.
Of course, they're not binding.
Yeah,
right.
Which certainly, unquestionably, not binding is what the only way we could have been, quote unquote, fair about that.
Yes. Never mind that I talked to like a half dozen lawyers.
That just doesn't reflect what experts told you.
Yeah.
So that was a minority of those lawyers that thought that they were binding, but I can't just ignore the existence of those people. I called them. They gave me a legal interpretation that I'm in no position to argue with.
I love, like, one of them made the point, like, you never know what a person in a black dress and a hammer set is going to say, which I guess is not the way that judges like to be referred to, but that's the way it is. Like, we don't know exactly what a judge would say. Like, people who say, like, we know what the Constitution says. You don't know what somebody's going to actually decide at the end. That's the whole point.
Right.
So, but
now,
anyway,
to be clear, there were plenty. I did talk to a handful of people who were like, "This isn't binding. It's just a letter."
The story illuminates how not binding it could possibly. All right. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm done with this stupid debate. Anyway. The thing that is, so I tried to summarize. Every time somebody asks me, and a lot of people do in the community, like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
I always say, look, do you want the most money to go to the city of San Diego as fast as possible, and to have this land developed as fast as possible? I think that the best bet for that is Soccer City Measure E. And I think there's obviously it could fall apart, whatever.
Right.
But that's, if you're hoping for that, and that's what you want, probably go for that. If you believe in universities and what they can do for an economy and how important they are to the macroeconomy of a region, and if you trust San Diego State and you like San Diego State and you believe that it needs to expand and that it should control that land, you should give Measure G to them.
Yes.
And if you don't want either of those and you want a more public process, you should vote no on both.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing, and it seems to help people think about it, right?
Yeah.
Boy, I got myself into a Twitter sprawl.
Because what you said was, if you trust SDSU, and then you said some other things, but that was what they latched onto as the suggestion that you should not trust SDSU.
Oh God, it's Twitter. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, measures E and G.
Anyway, that's a trip into SDSU West Twitter for this week. Now we've recounted it on this audio medium. This is a very riveting podcasting. That's what our mentions have looked like for the last 3 or 4 days.
Well, I am glad. Are you good on your pick?
Yeah, I didn't expect to be in this position, but here we are, and I stand by it.
All right. Well, this I'm glad that this talent has fallen to me. This is a good one.
Yeah.
It's one also close to my heart. A lot of these are close to my heart, so I was able to get the things that are close to my heart.
It is about you, isn't it?
District. Let's admit we're all narcissists. It's fine.
If that's the best way to make you feel better about your narcissism, sure. You can do that.
Don't look at me like that. Late last week, and I'm just going to read your introduction to your story about District 2.
Okay.
I loved this. This was so good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I don't praise you enough because you probably deserve a little more, but this is good. Late last week, Councilwoman Lori Zaff's election campaign announced a press conference that pledged to set the record straight about voters in her coastal district, after voters in her coastal district had been inundated by mail attacking her for past comments she made about gay people and celebration of Donald Trump's inauguration in 2017. She did, by the way, go to a celebration in Rancho Santa Fe about his inauguration. A few hours later, they sent out a correction the press conference, it turned out, would not set the record straight. There would be no mention of a record that needed to be straightened out at all. The press conference would just be a straightforward rally for her candidacy. But the campaign's impulse to respond to those attacks reflect the state of the panic on the right, as the possibility that Zaff could become the first city council incumbent to lose since House Party 2 was still in theaters gets more real. District 2 is my selection in what, the ninth pick, the Voice of San Diego elections draft. It's fascinating. I'm watching these mailers pour in, and it's all about how much Zaff is not like Trump, how much she opposes Trump, but it should be clear she has never articulated that she does not like Trump.
Yes.
Right.
In fact, if she had, I promise you would have heard about it.
Absolutely.
Because the people who are looking to defend her against those accusations would have made great hay of them. In fact, they would have put them on mail pieces. They would have provided them to journalists and encouraged them to fact check the mail that everybody was receiving.
And it would have been legitimate news. It
And
would have been very interesting in this time to
Yes.
have a Republican city councilwoman.
For instance, if the Democrats had attempted to run a campaign like this against Chris Keatts, a Republican also on the city council who's running right now,
Or Bonnie DeMonis.
or Bonnie DeMonis, it would have been very easy to find public statements that they made distancing themselves from the president of their party.
Yeah. So that is really, this is one or two areas of the county where the Lincoln Club, the Conservative Political Action Committee, is spending money trying to hammer Donald Trump and show how their candidate doesn't like him.
Yeah.
Which I think if you surveyed their board, would probably be 90 to 100% all on board with Make America Great Again, Donald Trump Express, right?
Yeah,
it has to be pretty
I mean,
close.
we have covered when Republicans in this town have distanced themselves from Donald Trump for one reason or another, we've mostly covered it. And that is because it is not the standard position.
Right.
It wouldn't be news if everyone felt that way. It's news because most do not feel that way.
And again, this isn't just her responding to Democratic attacks that she's tied to Trump.
Right.
They're proactively saying she stood up to him on offshore drilling.
Yeah.
And my favorite this week was a mailer that arrived at my place that touted how she banned plastic straws and styrofoam, which, like, again, I guarantee you there's not a single member of the Lincoln Club. Maybe there's a couple.
There's a lot of people in the Lincoln Club, so it's hard
Right.
to be that broad about it.
That's fine.
It's not a popular opinion within the Lincoln Club to
get
ban
rid of
styrofoam
plastic
and
straws.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's one of those own the lib things to, like,
Make
take
fun
a
of
picture
how
a
silly it
straw
is. Yes.
And say, like, ooh, triggered or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's and that, you know, that Zaff, well, I don't know. My point is like, what a weird situation we have playing out, and really indicative of the sense of at least coastal liberals and coastal districts like this, that they're not into Trump.
Well, look, I mean, I talked to Brian Pepin, who's president of the Lincoln Club, and
Yeah.
his quotes to me were like, you know, I mean, it's interesting to read them as endorsements of Lori Zaff. It was about how he's talking to me about how she's such a mixed bag and how she so often votes against their interests.
Yeah, and you made the point right after that. You're like, that hasn't stopped them from pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into her campaign, right?
Right, yeah, with $1.4 million.
Yeah, this is turning into a very expensive race, as we talked about last week on the pod. Like, this race could determine a lot about the future of the city, about policy of the city, about if there's a Democratic supermajority, could be grand liberal vision for going forward that they won't share with us. And it's fascinating. A lot of implications there. Now, Jen Campbell is plenty flawed. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about her right now. She basically shares the same perspective on most local issues that Lori Zaff has.
On the actual, like, land use nuts and bolts issues that the city council votes on.
Yeah, it's not clear that she has any clear managerial advantage or competence advantage necessarily on that sort of thing. And so who knows how that's going to play out. But I do think it's a good pick for the 9th pick.
It would have been a shame if either D2 or the Measure E, Measure G races went undrafted.
Yes.
That would have been a shame. It is interesting. We should note in this post-draft wrap-up real quick. Supervisor's race.
Yeah.
Supposedly the most thought of, most closely watched race. Not drafted.
Highest priority for labor in the region was to get Nathan Fletcher elected to the supervisors board. That was a very controversial thing. It has just petered out as far as tension.
It feels like there hasn't been a campaign in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They're running ads and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but
Bonnie Dumanis could have made a lot of waves. She could have been all over the media. She could have said things that were interesting and just never did.
Yeah.
But and then there's also the 49th and the 50th congressional district.
That's also
the future
indicative
of the country.
of how strange we are that national politicians wouldn't if the New York Times had a draft of congressional races, they very well may pick the 49th or 50th.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
We're just like, yeah.
They'd pick them both.
They'd pick
1
them
and
both.
2.
We're like, but have you heard of Sunday Cover?
La Mesa City Council.
Yeah, that was a home run.
By the way, but Duncan Hunter's on the ballot.
All right, we will post our picks, the 9 picks we had for this election stories to watch Tuesday. If we get a chance, maybe we'll do a special elections recap that night or something. But we will definitely be back next week to process everything that happened. Thanks to everybody and our partners at News Radio 600 Kogo. And one other thing, if you are around and want to come on November 14th in Barrio Logan at the Iron Fist Brewery, starting about 5:30, we're going to have a little Brews News. Have a lot of people, a lot of our reporters there. Come get some beer or seltzer water with lime, like I like, and say hi, and we'll have some fun.
Yep.
Thanks to everybody, and we'll see you next week.